Hi, everyone, and welcome to DeeCilla Comfort Center again, where we are here for another Tuesday talk. I am Shawanda Randolph, the founder and executive director here at DeeCilla Comfort Center. And today I have a guest. Her name is Deandrea Myrick. She is an
Hi.
author and a speaker. So, welcome, Deandrea.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we were having an interesting conversation about grief and loss. And I thought this would be a good topic for us to kind of stop and just start recording and allow everyone else into a little bit about our conversation. Partially because with everything that is coming up right after next week, I believe, is Halloween. And for those that celebrate Halloween, after that, today, as of today, well, after that, we will start seeing more and more of the reminders of Christmas and Thanksgiving. And people tend to go out shopping a little bit more and preparing for Christmas. And today we are about 36 days, about 36 days out from Thanksgiving and about 63 days out from Christmas. And when we start talking about loss and the ways that we experience loss, it can be something that we've experienced maybe in January of this year, maybe January of last year, or it could have been 5 years ago. But there's something that tends to happen around the holiday season. There are things that kind of trigger memories that may not trigger throughout the rest of the year. And whether it be through sight or sound or various things, we become reminded of the things that we have done with someone or something that we have now lost. And now we're trying to work through that process, or maybe we haven't worked through the process or begun to work through the process of how to get through that holiday or the upcoming holiday season with that loss and how that really affects us. So Deandra and I were talking a little bit about her story and a loss that she's experienced. And I thought that as a younger person, that it would be good for the audience to kind of tune in and listen, because sometimes the generations, we have different ways of communicating, we have different ways of expressing things. And I think it's good to kind of hear another perspective of loss and dealing with grief and how we can better help one another. So again, thank you, Deandrea. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your story that we were discussing.
Well, thank you. So, a couple of years ago, I lost my cousin, and it was a shock to me, and it was a shock to my family, especially the younger generation. There's eight of us, and we grew up in South Jersey, and we were really, really super close, always over each other's houses, always celebrating holidays together. We were just close. You didn't see one without the other. That's how we were. We were just super, super close. So when we lost him, it was a shock because we were young and you kind of feel invincible. And so when we lost him, I don't think that we were able to properly grieve. We talked about it with one another, amongst each other, and some of us would go visit his gravesite or make posts on Facebook and just talk about him once in a while around his birthday or around the time that he died. But it was like really a really big shock for us. It was like devastating. We weren't expecting it.
So when that happened, like you said, you went to the funeral and you guys have gone to the graveside, and there are different things that you may have talked about, but
Mhm.
did you receive any other outside support besides those within your normal immediate circle?
No, we didn't. We just had us.
Okay.
And mhm.
So how did that affect you guys? And do you think it would have been helpful to have someone outside of that immediate circle um, that maybe would have assisted with helping you understand that loss and understand that grieving process and that journey that you would need to go through?
You know what? I think that it would have, because we all grieved in different ways, and just to have somebody to help us be open. I know that with us, among my peer group around, you know, us that were in our early 20s and 30s, we could talk about it openly with each other, but it wasn't like an ongoing conversation amongst the entire family, generationally. So it really would have helped, because I mean, you would be walking through a store, or around his birthday, just all of a sudden, this sadness would just overcome, and you can just kind of feel it even a couple of years later amongst, my cousins and I.
So I think it's interesting how you mentioned that even something like going through the store and seeing something, but it seems as if you don't really think about it, but like you said, that sadness just kind of comes on you. And do you believe, or did you, in your experience, did you think that people realized of what was happening, or being able to recognize that you were experiencing that? And if so, or if not, how did that have any effect on you and your peer group?
I think that we recognized it because there would be times when we would just all, I mean, we're all in different parts of the country now, but when we would come together, we would just, visit his gravesite or make a Facebook post. So we would know that it was there, but we would, there's such a, I don't know, mindset in the family of survival, or you dealt with it. We had the funeral and it's over, that you don't expect it to come when it comes. So I think that it's there, but I do think that as a family we're still healing.
Okay. Um, were you, or can you speak to your perspective of the healing within your peer group and say an older generation, as you guys have been going through that?
I would say that the healing process, I mean, all we have basically is each other. There is no one really on the outside kind of giving guidance and saying it's okay to grieve. We're not seeing pastors or counselors. It's just us. And um, going through the process, basically, you know, with each other. We might gather for prayer, one Christmas, or bring up a memory while we're together. But
Mhm.
as far as healing, I haven't seen or gone through a deeper process.
So as you kind of come up with, or you come up again with the holidays, how do you get through the holidays? Is it something that you suppress, or you try not to think about, or like you said, you may just kind of, share a memory and then move on? Or how do you think you all are dealing with that? And do you think there's another way that would be beneficial for you guys to deal with that?
I think that with me, I suppress. I definitely suppress, and until I see like maybe a picture on Facebook, and it's all of us. So it was all of us during Christmas, and I made a Christmas photo album on Facebook, and so I see it, and it's just like, wow, he isn't here, because we're a family, and it's almost like, oh, our limb is missing, and we're just walking around like we're fine, but this limb is missing, and he was a big part of our family,
Mhm.
and it's still really, really heavy. So with me, I suppress it, and then something will bring it up, and I'm like, okay, this is how I feel. I can't believe I'm still grieving.
Mm. So I think that's really interesting that you mentioned about how in your mind a part of you thinks, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm still grieving. And I think that's very interesting that sometimes we think there is a finite moment in which you will no longer grieve, and that maybe it may be the same for everyone, or that it should be the same for everyone. Um, and also understanding that, if something hasn't been, I'll say, dealt with or talked about in a very healthy way, then it
Mhm.
also seems like, like you said, you suppress it, but then when something else comes along, it just piles on top. And so we're never really dealing with any of those, issues in a very healthy way. And so, I think something that we are trying to do here at DeeCilla Comfort Center is to identify, um, I'll say, these habits of not talking or not openly sharing, or
Mhm.
perhaps not identifying what someone may or may not be going through,
Mhm.
or may not be processing. And so we wanted to bring in a and grief loss and recovery counselor, and she's coming in on the 2nd of November, and she's going to help us as a community better understand loss. And we say loss because loss can be a family member, it could be a friend. So therefore, it could be a person, but it can also be a loss of a job. It can be a loss of, a home because maybe someone has moved, or maybe, parents have divorced or split up, and now there's, changes in the family in that aspect, and maybe someone is now moving from one house to another. And I think these are all different ways in which we need to understand loss and how that
Mhm.
affects us all as individuals, but also affects your community. So like for yourself, that would be your family is your community. Because one of the things you mentioned was that you guys were always very close, but now you live across the country, right? So
Mhm.
that seems that's another type of loss. So with that loss, knowing that you guys would just kind of huddle around each other at the time and talk about it, and now you're not really there, how how does that play a part in you grieving or healing or working through things, especially when you're coming up with time frames of the holidays?
I think that it's just like um, we're across the country, but we're connected through social media. So someone will post, um, a memory post, and then we'll like it, and then we'll connect through that way. But even still, I feel like just having that one-on-one connection, um, and not being able to bring up his name, bring up a memory, and talk about him openly, um, will just help us heal more than to try to be strong and hold everything in because it's still there bubbling under the surface, you
Yeah.
know.
So when you see those memories, because you guys have social media, like for me, I will tell you that for myself, and I don't know, I guess you can say, unfortunately, I've, had to deal with a lot of death over my lifetime.
Mhm.
A lot of family members and friends, and then just various things, a lot of moving around. Man, I think I even went to, I don't think I ever stayed in one school more than about 2 years. And so I went to a lot of schools growing up. And so making those transitions were various types of loss for me, being there by myself and not having, those types of friends. Um, and even the loss of, I lost my daughter years ago, and she would be 21 now. And it's interesting because, the holidays were always very, very tough for me as well.
Mhm.
Initially, it was because when I revealed that I had been abused and we moved during that time frame. Um, it was not too far from holidays, and so the holidays were very, very different for me because of how we experienced holidays before we moved and before I revealed the abuse, and how the holidays were afterwards. And it was a major difference. And so it was just never really quite the same for me. But then not really dealing with that right away, or not recognizing how to
Mhm.
do that right away. You know, I had the circle of family like you. I
Mhm.
had friends that I spoke to, you know, similar as you. But for me, um, that circle wasn't, I'll say, broad enough
Uh, yeah, it
because
wasn't.
I
Yeah.
could have used at that time some additional support to help me understand some triggers that would help me. Because, like you said, sometimes you just see things and all of a
Mhm.
sudden the sadness comes on. And if you're not aware of that, and if your community isn't aware of that, they don't understand why you're sad. They don't understand what's triggering that, but neither do you, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, for years of not dealing with that, it became very, I think I suppressed it, similar to what you did, right?
Mhm.
But then going through another traumatic experience later on in life, which would be, you know, the loss of my child, that became a different type of loss for me. And so it just kind of compiled on to the last thing because I don't believe I had the right tools and resources to get through it. Um, and while I knew to read my Bible, while
Mhm.
I knew to pray, that
Mhm.
wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I actually needed to sit down and talk to someone who, the way I say it is, someone that God gave a gift to that would help me to get through that healing journey. And I think that's part of understanding how all of our gifts do work together, right? Um, but that trigger every year or
Mhm.
uh, the holidays, it would just happen. And I
Yeah.
could be out for New Year's and I could be hanging out and things would be great. But then all of a sudden, that sadness would come on. And be, it would happen without me even thinking about it. It was just the timing. And I would have to leave. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that my daughter had passed away New Year's Day. Well, fortunately enough, I was able to receive counseling um, because, of course, in some cultures, especially like ours, going to
Yes.
counseling is not something we talk about.
It's taboo. You don't need
It's
counseling. You
very
need
taboo, right?
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, read your word and pray about it. Um, or even within some families, it's that, you know, let's keep it in the house, or I've talked to my child about it. And I think sometimes as adults, we think that's enough.
Yeah.
And because we've done something, but it's really not enough for you, you know, so to speak. And I think that's one of the things that you mentioned earlier was there were some adults that you may have mentioned something to or said something to,
Yeah.
but it
It's
may not have been exactly what you needed though.
exactly because we
Um,
can.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, because we can. I mean, I talked to a few close family members, and we'll talk about it once in a while, once in a blue moon. You know, but it's not enough because people grieve in different ways, and you know, there's so many of us. We can't expect to be able to be or to fill the hole or the gap that someone else needs. So
Yeah. Especially if they're going through it themselves.
yeah, they're
Um,
going to fit them themselves. So that how can they help you? You
yeah,
know.
that's interesting. So yeah, I think sharing does help, but when we all still have to go through that process, I think there's something that we need outside of our circle as well, so that we can, you know, gain those right tools.
Hmm.
So again, I thank you for sharing that. One thing I do want to ask, and feel free to, you know, not answer this.
Okay.
Um, as far as as far as identifying maybe additional support that you think would have helped, is this something that has been or has ever been part of your conversation amongst your peers or amongst, we'll say, an older generation?
Counseling.
Hmm.
Um, You know, no. It hasn't. It hasn't. I was like, let me think about it. No. Um, there's so much focus on, you know, what should have happened before versus what we're dealing with now, that there's no talk of it, because in the older generation it's kind of like it happened, we're in survival mode, or we push it under a rug. And within the peer group, it's when we're all together and we're having fun, or there's an outing after like Thanksgiving or Christmas, we're definitely talking about him with memories from camp and having fun, and we're talking about it and we're being open and honest. But there's no talk of professional help. It's just kind of like, this is the mindset. We gotta keep living. And you can't focus on, the negative things, but then you don't really heal. And when you talk to people, and I have a chance to talk to this cousin or that cousin, you find out that they're still dealing with it. It doesn't go away.
So how do you think it would be received if, say, there was a workshop like the one that we're having at DeeCilla Comfort Center? So I will tell you that our registration for this workshop has been very low,
Hmm.
very slow and very low.
Hmm.
And from your perspective, why do you think that it may be challenging for individuals to, what do you think is a barrier that causes someone to maybe not come into a workshop like this? And even considering that barrier, what would you say?
Excuse me.
Hmm.
I think the barriers are that, um, there's two barriers. I think that number one, that some people just don't know that they're grieving. I know that even when my cousin died, I didn't cry, like really cry or process it for a couple of days. And it was just like, wow, you're holding that in. And you
Hmm.
don't even realize it because I don't know, like I would say, like, culturally, it's just like, oh, we have to, like, this is a struggle, or this is an obstacle, and we have to overcome. And it's that overcome by not doing, by not healing and looking back and saying, this is what happened to me. And two, I think it's that culture or that mindset that what goes on in this house stays in this house, and it happens every day, and this is a reality. Deal with it. Then keep moving. Don't stop and talk about it. Don't whine or complain. You know, you don't need a workshop, you need Jesus. So I think that just people's mindset have to like it just has to change. Like, you know, even Jesus had compassion on, the woman that was grieving over her son. So just go and talk to someone that can help you, you know.
Yeah, Gina says that we need counseling, but we need Jesus, but we also need counseling too. And
Mhm.
that's the direct quote, but I mean,
Mm.
it speaks volumes to understand that counseling is not a bad thing.
It's not a
Um,
bad thing. It's just like,
it,
why are you talking to these professionals? Because they have the tools that can help, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, I thank you for sharing today. I thank you for sharing your story, and hopefully, our conversation today will perhaps spark other conversations, and hopefully we will get some individuals that will come in and, at least if not anything, that has curiosity about this grief, loss, and recovery workshop that we're going to do on November 2nd at DeeCilla Comfort Center, where Gina is a certified grief recovery and loss counselor. She's going to come in and give us some tools and resources that will help us, and to help ourselves, and to also help those that we care about, so that we understand what they are going through and how we can be a good support system for them as well. So That is again on November 2nd. It is at DeeCilla Comfort Center. You can go on our website at www.deeCillacenter.org or right on our Facebook, which is at DeeCilla Center. And you can see all of our events that are coming up. Again, Understanding Loss, we're calling it Beat the Holiday Blues. It is on November 2nd starting at 9:30, and the classes are small. We keep everything small so that we can have an opportunity to share, and the seats are limited to 10 participants. So thank you again for joining us here today at DeeCilla Comfort Center for another Tuesday Talk, where our guest today has been Deandrea Myrick. She's an author and speaker. And of course, she's joined us by Zoom today. So thank you very much, Deandrea, for joining us
Thank
and
you.
sharing the story. So again, thank you guys for joining us. We hope to see you again at another Tuesday Talk, and we hope to see more of you guys that will sign up and join us on November 2nd, where we will be meeting with Gina and learning more about understanding loss and how we can get through the holidays for ourselves and also for those that we love. You guys have a great week, and we hope to see you again soon.